Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Rav Shmuel here, Rabbi Stephen S. Epstein, modern Rabbi Shmuel. People have asked me, what is with this modern rabbi thing? Well, I think for those of you that have seen, my videos, my vlogs, heard my sermons, you kind of see that my big thing is making the relevance between what Torah was 3,500 years ago, and this is especially appropriate as we are going to be honoring Shavuot, where we drink a lot of milk, and you can see the white yarmulke for the color of milk, light shirt, and we'll talk about why we do that in a minute. But I like to see the relevance of how it pertains to us today. Um, Case in point, kind of, and maybe I'm being a little contrived here or reaching, but my wife, the Rebbitzin, sent me a video about a guy named Joseph. Gosh, his last name, I think it was Leibovitz. He was one of the Jews that Schindler saved during World War II. And he afterwards became a Nazi hunter and found the Butcher of Prague, the Nazi officer that was portrayed in the movie by Rafe Fiennes. It looks like Ralph, but it's pronounced Rafe. Rafe Fiennes, who would just, shoot people at will, whatever. He was a butcher. He just had you know, no sense of humanity. And he had said that when he finally caught up to him and captured him, he looked into his eyes to see if he had any remorse or regret at what he did. And Joseph said he didn't see it. It is what it is. So how does that portray with the Torah? How many times does it say dispossess the Hittites, the Hivites, the Girgashites, the Argosites, the Canaanites? I don't think there are Argosites, but what about, Shabbat Zachor, where it repeats the Maftir about destroying Amalek? And who's the modern Amalek? Hamas, right? Hamas almost sounds like Haman, doesn't it? So, that's kind of our heritage. So my idea is, what do we do with the Torah to make it relevant today? And that's kind of like my shtick, if you will. I love Torah, and that's part of it. So, going on about Shavuot, why do we drink milk? Okay, why only dairy? Well, as is typical in Judaism, there are about two, three, four, five reasons why we do it. The first reason is that the Torah was given on Shabbat, and it was improper to slaughter animals on Shabbat. So what's left? Dairy. Also, what does it say about the promised land? A land flowing of milk and honey. There's your milk, right? Also, milk as a nourishment. Torah is a nourishment. It was given Torah. I know some people say, well, wait a minute. I thought water, mayim bisason. Yes, you're correct. Okay. Anyway, moving on. So that's the deal with Shavuot. And also my wife's, the Rebbitzins, ideas for a sermon, and perhaps we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how battle still goes on. It does. We've been fighting people that have sought to destroy us. I know there's a big thing going on in Israel, and I'm not going to comment on that. Just that, we need to get the hostages back and we need to destroy the Hamas. That's a discussion for other people. All right, let's talk about Shavuot. There are two readings this for Shavuot. The first one is, as you would guess, the Ten Commandments. It's that section in Exodus. The next section is in Deuteronomy, and it basically leads up to the three pilgrimage festivals, which are, of course, I'll pause to have you folks think about it: Passover, Pesach, Shavuot, Feast of Weeks, and also Sukkot. Okay, those are the three pilgrimage festivals. Shalosh Raglayim, Shalosh three, Raglayim, feet, because those were the times when Israel would trek over to the temple to celebrate the festivals. So the first reading is from Exodus, and it's the Exodus reading of the Ten Commandments. Little different than the Deuteronomy reading because it's the infamous Zachor et HaShabbat, remember the Sabbath. And in Deuteronomy, it's Shamor, guard or keep. The Zachor, remember, is a positive commandment. Always think about Shabbat. That's why the days of the week are named based on counting down to Shabbat. So if it was Wednesday, for example, Yom Revi'i, the fourth day coming to Shabbat. So we're always mindful of that. The Shamor part of it is guard, which is a negative commandment. In other words, don't let it slip away from you. That's the idea. Negative commandment. So that's it. So the Ten Commandments seem pretty straightforward until you pick up the Art Scroll Chumash and start reading the commentary. Okay, I am the Lord thy God that brought you out of the land of Egypt. Okay, okay, he's God who brought us out of Egypt. What does that mean? It means that God is carrying us, as it says in the Torah, on eagle's wings, and God is safeguarding us, and that is God doing his part of the covenant. Our part is to we will do and we will hear, which is what we said when God said, I'm going to start giving you the commandments. So it represents a relationship. That's why when we start talking about some of the other commandments, like don't use my name in vain. God is sacred. And people say, okay, don't say, damn it. It goes a lot beyond that. It's taking a vow. I swear to Hashem that, bam. And it talks about vain oaths. It talks about people that are trying to convince you, you can trust them. And they say, oh, no, I swear to God that da da da. We're not supposed to do that. And it's about a reverence. It's about a respect. Um, don't have any molten images or other gods before me. Well, you will start thinking that maybe those are where the powers are. Why do we say Adonai Elohim? Okay, the Yud Hey Vav Hey followed by Elohim. Why do we say that? Why do we combine the two? Well, the Hashem part of it, Yud Hey Vav Hey, is God's proper noun, and it is the God. Elohim is basically it can be a generic term. It can mean our God. It can mean someone else's God. It can mean judges. It can mean angels dispensing justice because the Yud Hey Vav Hey is the right hand of mercy. Left hand is God's attribute of justice. And you kind of need both of them. But the idea is that when you're talking about gods, we only respect the one God. That's it. Just the one God, you know, the God of gods, if you will. Okay. Um, Honor the Sabbath. Don't work. Don't, you're supposed to rest. God's the role model. God doesn't need to rest. God created the universe in 6 days and took 6 days so that we could have that seventh day of rest as an example. And you're supposed to rest. You're supposed to devote yourself to spiritual pursuits. Fifth commandment, honor thy father and thy mother. Well, that's where you get your social graces from. And by the way, if you grow up in a dysfunctional household and you become moral and ethical yourself, the sages say they give you a lot of credit for doing that because you didn't have role models. You figured it out on your own. Of course, then the other issues that come along with that, but that's basically it. Okay. Now we start getting into some of the other, those were the God commandments. Then we get into the people, the fellow humans commandments. Okay. Don't murder. Don't steal. Don't commit adultery. Don't swear. Don't swear falsely. Don't covet. There's a lot that goes into those commandments. Don't murder. Okay, well, that seems pretty self-evident. You just don't kill somebody. Okay, but you don't embarrass them either. Because when somebody's embarrassed, their face turns red like you're drawing blood. So there's that. Um, don't commit adultery. Well, that's murdering the family values and the social foundation of society. Don't steal. All right, well, you don't take what's not yours, but you don't steal people either. You don't make somebody work for you and then sell them as a slave. Now, in the modern terms, you treat people with respect, right? You don't steal people's work. You pay them what they're worth. You don't try to cheat them and pay them less, right? Okay. Don't bear false witness. That's pretty easy, but along with that, is all the bearing false witness of the gossiping. That's bearing false witness when you tell a story about someone that's not true. Don't covet. Well, you don't have to be happy with your lot. You can grow, you can strive for more things. You can look at your neighbor and say, wow, he's driving a Porsche. I'm going to work real hard and buy a Porsche myself. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is, I want his Porsche or her Porsche. That's something you don't do. So, those are basically about the Ten Commandments, worthy of study. We talked about the three pilgrimage festivals. We're given Torah. The festivals are kind of a foundation of our year, which is part of the Torah and the way we act. So there's your relevance to Shavuot. Okay, Chag Sameach, and thank you as always for listening, and we will see you in services.